set it so that the person who was hacked never knew that they were hacked, and read all of the corporate documents, plans, provisioning, details, numbers, money related to Twitter. Clever and easy, and didn't take a keyboard logger, but took the security systems of cloud computing and used them to their own advantage. Think about these types of things. I mentioned earlier about supply chain security. There was a great example of this a couple of weeks ago in July, where BlackBerry, Crackberry, pushed out an update in the United Arab Emirates that included keyboard logging, essentially a Trojan, that logged everything that your phone was doing and sent it off to the government. And that was a remote pushed upgrade that you had no control over. And the only reason people detected it was to notice that the battery drain was significantly increased and the modem, the radio, seemed to be working a lot harder than normal. Good. I have exactly 3 minutes and I'm on the right point of where I wanted to talk about. Right. Hands up if you're a police officer. Worth a shot. I noticed a number of people grabbed their cameras. So, this is the political part, and this is the part that probably my CEO would have loved to know I'm going to talk about beforehand. Bummer. So one of the biggest threats that I see on the horizon right now for the ISP and you as a customer is the overregulation, which is coming out of a lot of different markets. Non-proportional invasion of your privacy, of our work methods, of the things that we want to build and deploy for you. Data retention. The original problem of data retention, I'll get back to that in a moment, was an admirable one to try to solve, but the way it's being done is ridiculous. Tapping, internet tapping, aftappen, whatever you want to call it, that is really stifling the internet community, especially in the Netherlands. Other countries have different rules, some it's easier. We are obligated to make sure any service that we make or sell to you is completely tappable, unencrypted, or hand over the encryption keys to the government. That sucks. That really sucks. And I wish that more people cared about this in some passionate way and would do something about it, because it's definitely not proportional to the risks that are out there. Thank you. And I joke a lot, and I don't know if Marco's in the room. Marco, are you here? I thought I heard you earlier. Marco is probably our guru of IPv6, and I jest a lot, IPv6 sucks. Oh, there he is. IPv6 doesn't really suck. It doesn't solve the problems of IPv4, and as we all know, implementing it isn't just click on done. But he'll talk about that tomorrow, I believe. And he's got great wisdom there. But one of the things that he and I have tension over is I've got these government regulators coming along and saying, you can't do it until it can be tapped and intercepted and everything gets sucked off onto the government's computers and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, that sucks. That's not the way the internet is developed. We are going to be years and years, perhaps decades ahead of the capabilities of the government to receive this type of data, but they're forcing us to move at their pace, to slow things down, and to just make it unworkable. But anyway, I rant. Data retention. Right? I want to speak briefly about this one. The original goal made sense. Law officer in this country tracking, for a very good reason, a bad guy in this country. And he says, hey, police officer, we have a mutual understanding that you will exchange data. Could you tell me where I can go to a door and knock on, because this is what it's all about. The police think in terms of doors they can knock on. Where can I find the guy who used this IP address 8 months ago? And depending upon the laws of that country, there's absolutely no idea whether or not that information is retained. So the original European legislation was fairly simple and made sense. Retain that which you have and have generated through automated or manual processes for a period of between X and Y amount of time. Well, that's where it starts to get ugly, between X and Y. And that's up to every member state to define. Some countries are doing 6, some are doing 24 months. So the original purpose isn't being solved, which means a police officer still can't get the question answered by going to another country, because you don't know if they're going to have it. You still, as a law enforcement person, have to work more quickly. You have to change the way you work. The problem is that the way and the amount of information that's required to be retained is phenomenal. It's not as bad as some of the press has said. For example, my last point, it's not URLs, that's content. The legislation prohibits retention of content. So what website you go to isn't logged. IP address is not logged in the Netherlands. In the United Kingdom, it's a slightly different environment. But here in this country, we do not log what websites you visit or what IP addresses you go to. That's not covered. It is email tos and froms, and what IP address delivered us an email, so they could figure out basic social networks. Who do you know? Who do you mail? And so on. Call detail records from VoIP. Who did you call? When did you call them? And for how long did you call them? So it is a potential invasion of privacy. Is it proportional? I don't know. Personally, I don't think so. I don't think this is a proportional solution to the problem that's out there. And then I read stories like this. This has been a fairly popular one. Any journalists that are here, please, talk to the guy next to you. Get PGP. Don't let your communications be intercepted. Make it really difficult for the police to intercept and figure out what you're talking about. And then next to finally, lawful interception. You think it's bad now with the laws, and I think a lot of you know what the rules are in this country. But these are some of the things they're looking at down the road. Tapping based upon envelope from. Those of you who understand how email works, or who have ever received a spam message, will realize how stupid this is. What it boils down to is the government would love it if a provider can say, oh yes, foobar@gmail.com sent an email from the Access for All network, and we want you to tap it. How can you trust that? How do you know that it's foobar@gmail.com that sent that mail? You don't. You have no way of knowing. It's just ridiculous. They want full traceability of packets. And there's a number of efforts in the ITU and other standards bodies to try to get router manufacturers to implement extra hooks so that you can trace every single packet and everything that's done. Is that proportional? He's making this funny symbol with his hands. I think he wants me to stop. We're almost there, I promise. They also want to ban things like torrents, darknet, Tor, and I know I saw a couple of people with Tor stickers on their laptops, people representing Tor. Tor's got a lot to answer for, it's got a lot of evil going on, but it also does a lot of good to someone. So really, what I would rather see is the government and us asking the government to flip this around. Let's encourage security. Let's not penalize companies and providers and say, hand us unencrypted data. Why aren't we instead mandating the use of strong crypto? Why aren't we making it more difficult for the bad guys to get at our personal information? Why aren't we mandating that outsourcing needs to be controlled in a way that doesn't expose the privacy-sensitive data or secret-sensitive nature of data, if you prefer that, to the entire world? Let's think about doing these things from a positive and encouraging security point of view. Stories like this I won't even talk about. We're not going to talk about this because we're out of time. But you see, like I told you at the very beginning, there was one other thing that I wanted to do. This is my friend. I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago. She's never going to attend an event like this. She barely figured out how to turn on her computer. But this is what she asked me. Is it safe for me to do internet banking? Well, first of all, I was glad that she asked. Second of all, I was sad that she had to ask. That was quickly followed up by, why are the banks closing all their doors? I read in the press about how internet banking is so insecure, and phishing, and these postbus-51 and all of these things that's like, ooh, 3 keer kloppen, look out, be wary. That's fine. I'll go to a bank branch. Oh, it's closed. Please see our website. That's difficult to explain to someone who just wants to use the internet. This was a really interesting one. She wanted to use Albert Heijn Faust service where they deliver it to your house, but didn't trust them with the ability to take money from her bank account. Albert Heijn. But this is a good thing for me. The fact that she's thinking this way means that the right questions are getting to the right people. And perhaps the best or worst question was, what's a web browser? God. I don't know if you've seen that YouTube video.